We are back for the Wise Women Online Symposium. I'm Hollie. I'm on Walbunja UN land, and this is our final session for today, which is Friday. And I've got here Shona Lee, who is just so many awesome things. I just really fucking love this woman. So she's going to introduce herself and tell us where you are in the world, Shona, what's your gig, whatever you want us to know to begin with, and then we'll go along our merry way in our conversation.
Oh, exciting. Well, I am on Gadigal land, and it's a place called Darlington, which is a little suburb next to Redfern, near Sydney Uni in Sydney. And a greeting in Koori is Bujari Gamararu. So that is a nice way to begin.
Nice, thank you. Tell us a little bit about what your
I forgot
everyday,
to say what I do.
what does your everyday look like?
Yes. Okay, so I work with people. I am a massage therapist. I am a Feldenkrais practitioner. And the work that I do is helping people connect to their physical experience, find more ease, comfort, and sense of inner equilibrium. And I really love that they get to experience themselves in a different way, that they realize that that feeling is possible in their own body, which is really lovely. And I get to meet a lot of people as well.
So are you would you say you're a people person or are you a body person?
I love people, but I'm not a big crowds, let's go and keep socializing a weekend type of person.
Yeah, one-to-one.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, perfect job.
I think I like people's stories. I think I like, how they've become the person that they are, the life that they've lived, that individual.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah. I'm definitely, although it would surprise people, I'm definitely an introvert. But I do like to have that one-to-one space with people or small group space to really go deep, right? To go and learn exactly who they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why Wise Women Gathering will never get over 200 people. Like really, we sit at about 120, 150 these days, but we want to keep that intimate space because you're able to have those little one-to-ones or small group conversations, right?
And I think those little conversations that do happen, I think when people come together for an event, they talk to each other at breakfast, in the queue, sitting next to someone in a way that you don't in a public space. So if you go out to the cafe, you don't talk to the person next to you necessarily, but if you're having breakfast or dinner with a whole bunch of other people who've had a very interesting afternoon, these conversations come up, which is really lovely.
That's so true. Around the queue piece, I've not really thought about that, but I'm actually going to add that to my sort of welcome spiel at the conference because it's almost worth pointing out to people that when you stand in queue for the food here, like these are people you're allowed to turn around and talk to them. Because sometimes I do notice there's little pockets of people just kind of standing there. So I think we can add that as
over the weekend, maybe that.
Totally. That's true. Yeah. So adding that from the beginning that like you're totally welcome to just turn around and speak to whoever's next to you because these are all just friends you haven't met yet, right?
Yeah.
That's so nice. So Shona Lee just shows up in my inbox one day with like these applications for the conference and I'm like, who is this woman? Like I've got some secret like I don't even know what it is. Like, I want to be a Feldenkrais practitioner. I don't want to go and study Feldenkrais. It sounds like it's really long and hard. So I see this woman.
We're all about ease, Hollie. We're all about finding the simplicity. Hardness.
That's true.
Yeah, that's a different genre. Yeah.
That is very true. And maybe that's what my leading edge is there. Like I'm actually terrified of that amount of ease. Yeah. That's for therapy. Anyway. But see, and I was like, oh my gosh, a Feldenkrais practitioner. Awesome. Yes. She's getting a tick of yes. I haven't even looked through her website properly yet, but she's getting a yes because she's Feldenkrais. But then you show up and you actually are amazing. And the ease just comes out of you, the softness and the space, right? And we'll talk about that gift of space soon. And so then, Shona says, well, could I also be in the healing tent? And we say, yes, of course. And so then I go and have a healing session with, or a Feldenkrais session with you right at the end of conference. I never do healing sessions at the beginning because there's too much going on, obviously. But right towards the end, when my body was really starting to feel it, I sat with you for 45 minutes and walked out of there feeling so much better just by bringing my attention to myself. Yeah, which I love. I love that part of the work. And then this year she writes me and says, well, I would like to be a partner as well. And oh yeah, by the way, she's still an educator. So you've got all of these roles happening with Wise Women Gathering. You tell me what's happening there.
Well, I think it's a space for me to explore what's current for me. So I think it's this really, nurturing space where whatever is present, so at the moment of space, this idea of space being really powerful. And as I explore those ideas, putting together a session helps me understand them more. It's like a lovely space for me to explore whatever's fascinating me.
And watching
also just
that
like
unfold.
a very receptive group of people who are all like-minded. You don't need to sell it. You don't need to convince anyone. You're not, trying to recruit people to come to your session. So that's a very different place than if you put on a workshop somewhere else. You've got to get the numbers, cover the cost of venue hire, and there's whole other considerations where here you can just focus on the content.
That's so true. Yeah. That's such a good way to look at it. I think that's a wise little bit of information for anyone who wants to educate with us. We were just talking before we got recording about the fact that we ask educators to pay their way the first time that they come, because it does cost quite a bit for each individual ticket holder to be there. And it's kind of a buy-in into the community, right? It's like this investment into here's all the things I don't have to do. I don't have to promote myself. I don't have to get a venue. I get to just show up. There's a ready-made audience there that are totally into whatever it is that I'm teaching. And I get fed for 3 days and I get to enjoy all these other educating things. So that's why we really hold that model.
Hiring of the marquees, and you pack up the marquees at the end, and I just leave.
Yes, yeah. So that's very good for people to remember.
With all the mud, that would have been a mega dismantle.
Yeah, I still have mats with mud on them now. That'll get sorted out as we start packing for this year.
My table from the healing tent still in the vinyl, in the little crevices. There's still a thin layer of earth. See, spirit.
That's right. Well, and I just spoke to Linda, and she in an earlier interview today, we spoke to Linda from the venue, and she said that they've just announced there's going to be a cold snap. So we're going from rain to cold this year. She's advised everybody to bring an extra jacket and an extra blanket.
I think that's more manageable. I think cold you can just layer.
Yeah, we can do fires and
rain
we can
was
be warm.
Next level.
And the mud to your knees. Yeah. So you're the only person throughout these interviews that's coming on from the healing tent, actually.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I wondered if you would talk about what it's like to do that work at the conference, and it probably crosses over to what we were just talking about. But what is it like to be there with these particular women doing this work in that space, and maybe even about that shared space with other healers? And also then, how do you find time to still be part of the amazing community? Because that's some feedback that we get, right? We get healers that will send an email and say, oh, I'd really like to come, but I don't want to pay the fee because I'm not going to get to enjoy the conference. But I know that you can be in the healing tent and enjoy the conference and also get fed. So tell me about that.
Yeah, well, I do feel a big part of the conference is actually the whole interactions outside of the scheduled sessions. So that general gathering, the healing tent isn't running at night time. That's always open space. The space before breakfast, the movement stuff, that's also, most people haven't booked their healing at 6 a.m. So you might get up at 6 a.m. and do some Tai Chi. And so to me, there is definitely enough of the interaction that happens. I think the people who come, they're in a particular place where they're really ready for some healing. There's a real kind of openness to whatever. They actually don't even necessarily mind the form that it takes, the particular modality you practice. They're just kind of open to serendipity and connecting with whoever happens to be available and letting that flow from there. It's a very unique environment in terms of having the canvas and the mud, and
It's a bit different to your clinic.
My other sessions in that same sort of trying to my things falling on the ground because then they'll get grubby. So that's particular, but it is this little tucked away cocoon where you can go into this little space. And back to the introvert people person thing from before, I actually think as an introvert, I like that little retreat. That if there's too many people and too much going on, I can go and just like have a bit of quiet time in this little tent. I don't have to be engaging with everyone all the time.
Yeah, that's nice. And so you'll be happy to hear that we've upgraded the healing space, and we'll be using our 6-meter, I call it Goldilocks. It's a bell tent, like a large bell tent. So 6 meters across, and I think we'll fit 2 nice beds there, maybe 3 in that space. So you'll have a floor, and it'll just be a really lovely little area for you. Feel a bit cozier, I think, than the big square plastic tent. Yeah.
And I think you ask a question about being alongside other things. I think there is something, I don't know how to articulate what that is, but I do enjoy working alongside other people in the different workplaces I work in. I get a bit of that, and it's just kind of, you pick it up, what's happening, and I don't know, it feeds something within me.
Yeah, well, it's community, isn't it? It's just another element of that connection and community.
And I think that's sometimes very important. Like it's sometimes why a group setting like a class really works, to hear other people experiencing change, and then that helps you have language for whatever's going on for you as well, that maybe you didn't realize until you heard someone else articulate it. Things like that.
Yeah. So many of us as practitioners, who attend this conference, we mostly work in a silo, right? It's mostly a kind of isolated job. And so we have to actively go and seek those either professional groups or groups within community that are going to expand us past our own little one-on-one practice. Yeah.
I also love within that little one-on-one practice, you get to really develop your way of working. I'm really glad I'm not part of, the New South Wales health protocols that I have to follow or whatever, that I get to, develop my own.
Absolutely. Yeah. Monica was just talking about before you came on, just around like the agents of change that women are, and that particularly we notice the women who show up at Wise Women Gathering are these agents of change that just do it differently from the start because the old way or the other way doesn't work anyway. That's what I'm hearing you say there. Yeah.
I think it's more just the individual. It's not that the other ways don't work, but you get to, bring all your life experiences and your particular whatever it is.
Flair, your particular flair. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that something about you, Shona, that stands out to me as that. I don't know what it is. I haven't worked it out yet. Can't get my finger on it. But there's something and maybe it's just that space that you hold, right? The ease and the space that I think is so uncommon in most of our everyday lives, that you do stand out in that way. To me, anyway. I don't know about to everybody else. And so when I saw that you had offered two different presentation options this year. I really wanted to bring one of those into the pre-conference because so both of them were accepted by the roundtable. Our roundtable doesn't know who it is that's putting these applications in. We take all the identifying factors out and then they just judge it on the merit of how it would fit into our kind of structure and our model. And they write me up a bunch of notes and then I take all those and I look at, what everyone has said. I think this year we had 6 or 7 women on the roundtable. Collate all that data together and then take it across and work out, okay, how does this fit onto a schedule, right? And so both of your presentations were accepted. And I thought that your conversation with your nervous system was really valid for a pre-conference, a longer session, a deeper dive. So our pre-conferences are all about, in the early arrival day on the Thursday before conference officially starts on Friday morning, there's a space where we have 3 different workshops on that are much deeper that people can come to for that early arrival time. So that's what we're talking about here in conversation with your nervous system. Tell me about it, Shona.
Well, I think this is a real point of difference between Feldenkrais body work and lots of other body work, in that I think a lot of other body work has a bunch of techniques and a bunch of things they're trying to do. So there's a sort of a sense of analysis. And the body work that is known as functional integration, which is hands-on Feldenkrais, we see it as a conversation where we're getting information, we're highlighting things, but we're not trying to impose a particular change. We're trying to support whatever the person is doing already and give them more options. So it's also just this thing that I have when I have conversations. I'm a bit fussy and I don't mind if you don't ask me how I am, but if you do, be prepared to listen and actually care about that.
Take it all in.
Yeah. And this idea of a conversation that doesn't have a preset agenda that has to go somewhere. And I think if we can learn to listen to what our body's trying to tell us, then we can really be in dialogue rather than trying to impose, no, you should do this, kind of overriding the signals that our body is sending us. So I see it as a real life skill to be able to speak body language, to hear what your body is trying to say, and using that template from conversations you have in a person-to-person, and how do you bring that to how you relate to yourself. So having that longer session time, I think, because it is a conversation, it's not me just delivering a whole bunch of ideas, it's discussion and it's little embodied experiences to give us the space to explore these ideas.
Yeah, so nourishing. Every time I just even look at the title, when I see it on the schedule, I'm like, oh, that feels like that's going to be such a nourishing session. Of course, I won't be attending because it's Thursday evening and I'll be running around crazy, but I will be channeling my ease from that workshop. I'll just be sucking it from the room.
I think one of the things about a good conversation is it actually invigorates you, both parties get something from it. I think that's a key feature. And if you start conversing with your nervous system, that really lifts everything.
Yeah, so good. Some people might not have even heard of Feldenkrais. It is kind of, there's not a bunch of you out there, right? It's not just like there's a lot of remedial massage, not so much Feldenkrais. Do you want to tell us a bit about it, but also you have done it already a little bit. Tell us why you think it's important.
Yes. Yeah. So a little bit of the backstory. So Moshe Feldenkrais was a person. So that's where the word comes from. And he had knee pain, had old soccer injuries, and he noticed with his knee pain that it was better on some days and worse on others. And he realized that he must be doing something differently on the days that it was better and the days that it was worse. So he started paying attention to what he was doing, how he was doing it. So that's really the foundations of what Feldenkrais is. It's learning to pay attention to what you're doing, how you're doing it, experimenting with little details and seeing what makes a difference. Does this make it feel more supported? Does this put more strain? In order to be able to sense these differences, actually you need to pair it right back to be able to perceive subtleties. So the classic example about why it's so small and gentle, if you're carrying a grand piano and you put like a mug on top of the grand piano, probably not going to notice the difference in weight because you're already using heaps of muscle to maneuver the grand piano. If you were carrying a feather, something really light, and you put a piece of paper on the feather, you would be able to detect that difference. So what we're doing in a Feldenkrais session, which is a bit like a meditation in movement, we're stripping it right back to the very beginning to catch our habits, to notice subtle little details that change when we do something differently. So we're interested in how movement connects throughout our whole body and finding skeletal support. If we've got skeletal support, then the muscles don't need to hold us upright so much. We're supported by our bones. The muscles can be free to move. So that's the overview. He had other influences, like he did judo. So he was teaching judo, and I think the idea of how do you teach a skill, how do you break it down, really informed the structure of his awareness through movement lessons, which are the group classes. And the other big influence, his wife was a pediatrician, and he watched children in the waiting room learning to crawl, learning to walk, and how they would explore the world without this like goal-driven agenda that adults get so fixated on. Like, if it didn't work, whatever, they just moved on to something else. That there was this like kind of open curiosity that they followed, and they didn't get too hung up on this one outcome.
Yes. Curiosity. That's the key right there. I think that's the piece. That's one of those other magical pieces of the Shona Lee magic.
Well, actually, it's a big part of Feldenkrais that the way it's guided is through questions. So it's developing your curiosity, this line of investigation.
Yeah, and I think it's, you're clearly embodying that work in so many ways. Like, it's become you, right? And I think that's, I mean, I haven't met very many Feldenkrais people. I don't know, two, and both of you are the same. And there's something about like comes through you and it becomes who you are, because the training is quite long, isn't it? Like, it's not just like you go for an 8-week course.
So it's run over 4 years. They're changing the structure a little bit now. Not 4 years full time, broken up into immersive segments. So you might have 2 or 3 weeks of full time, and then you have a couple of months where you go away and just let that integrate. So that's this really lovely idea that it's a deeper change. It's something that you grow into rather than you've gone 12 weeks in a row and you need to
emerge with some great thing. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So even the structure of the course is in place with the same thing that is teaching, which is like have a bit of a conversation and then come back and stay in awareness of that, integrate that for a bit.
So that's a really key idea that's woven throughout the work, having a pause. And the pause gives you space to integrate. That it's the pause where the change happens. So that's in the structure of a class. It should be in the structure of a hands-on session. I think we can get a bit carried away with like just following the thread and just like taking a moment to sit back and let their nervous system process. That is also very important. But something happens in the pause. So this is this idea of space being really important.
There might be another role I have to give you for the conference. You might have to be my pause reminder. Just like whenever you see me, Hollie, have you done a pause lately?
Well, I think there's a time and a place, and maybe at that moment the pause is less appropriate.
Okay, that makes me feel better. That's good.
Switching gears, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really beautiful for people to hear that there are practices like this. Like there's training that is structured in such a way and thought of in such a way, because it's not what our overculture gives us, you know. It's
So
really
this
lovely.
this idea of learning to listen to the sensations in your body is really paramount. It's when have you had enough? When do you sit out? Like, you don't need to keep up is, I guess, such a different message to what we think we need to be and do, that actually placing our sensory experience higher than the social expectation, that's a different stacking, you know?
Absolutely. We just played around with that. I had a retreat maybe 2 weeks ago, a warrior woman retreat. So, you know, people show up thinking they're going to do all this like tough fighting warrior stuff. And it was just, the vibe was just not there. Like everyone was, half the group was about to bleed and the other half had just finished. And it was a rainy, shitty day. And, you know, we took that warrior self into like what you're talking about around just like being more attentive to us and working out what we need. And we did some experiments that were like, let's see, like if you were to do some sort of fitness thing that's hard, when do you know to check out, as opposed to when your body has already checked out? You know, we've played around with that idea. So there's so many ways that people could be working this idea in. Yeah.
And this is the this thing that it's not just body work. These ideas filter over into how you do other things in life. I think it's known as a body work methodology, and there's actually principles that apply to much more than just your body.
Yeah. And that's what it seems like when you do your work, like the actual workshop pieces that you give us and the group sessions and teaching, that comes through more, right? Because you're not touching people's bodies, I assume. They're having to have those thinking about themselves.
And that's actually, I think, what is most powerful. If someone experiences a change in their body and not through anyone else touching them doing something, they did it all themselves. Like that is agency and autonomy, and that's really what this is about. It's leading people to make their own realizations.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. How many places in everyday life do people get invited to that opportunity?
Yeah. And I think it's so tempting to have the shortcut. Just tell me how I should sit. Whereas the structure of a Feldenkrais class, we explore lots of different ways of sitting, and it's guided by the question: if you go like this, what do you notice? If you go like that, what do you notice? And it keeps getting you to make decisions based on your physical feedback. So the power of that is the whole, like, giving a man a fish or teaching someone to fish. Then you can apply that to other things. This investigation.
I can relate to that from a somatic therapy perspective, because it's like I'm constantly asking clients to just check in with, yeah, what's it like to be like that? Like, oh, okay, you're sad. What's it like to be sad? Yeah, and can you sit with that? Can you just be sad or happy or whatever it is? Yeah, just inviting them back to their own self.
And that sadness shows up differently for different people on different days.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a one thing. Yeah.
And sometimes people will say to me, like, well, can't you just tell me how I'm supposed to get rid of the bad feelings, Hollie? Like, no, I can't. Definitely not.
And I think I find there's something about listening to them, acknowledging them. They change. That it's when they get ignored that they need to keep saying hello. But if you hear them, this is the conversation thing, then they can move.
Yeah. What we resist persists, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Marina has just said in the comments that was beautiful, explaining about Feldenkrais and agency being really powerful. I agree. Yeah, you just explained it so well. And it really feels like something that can go into any element of life. We just have to keep it iterating. We are not just talking about bodies here.
And I think
Yeah.
this is, it's lovely that that open-endedness lets people to come with their own life experiences and take it in different places.
Mm.
So that can keep evolving. It's not a static thing. It's not this series of movements that we have to stick to, that it's a thought process that we can keep creating with.
Mm. Mm.
So it's alive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's forever skills. Yeah.
And it's more interesting, right? You're not just going through the motions,
Yeah.
discovering it afresh
Yeah.
each time.
Yeah. That's that curiosity.
Yeah.
And so you'll be doing that. That's the conversations with your nervous system, but we also have you on the regular schedule, I guess, at just a 60-minute spot. So 3 o'clock on both Friday and Saturday. And that's called the gift of space. So maybe give us an idea. Again, that sounds ridiculously nourishing. Give us an idea of maybe how the two are going to be slightly different, those two workshops.
I think the gift of space, one of the main differences is we're also interested in how we interact with our physical environment. So in conversation with your nervous system, that's more internal. You'll be engaging with other people, but it's you and your relationship to your physical experience. And the gift of space explores how the space around us influences us, how we make choices about where we put ourselves in the room, how we can make the room more fit for purpose. And I guess, yeah, the lens looks outwards as well as inwards. I think with both of them, what I'd like people to walk away with is a way to embody spaciousness. So a lot of the different things we do in Feldenkrais, you're finding this kind of internal spaciousness, and often what's changed is how you think about it. So, you've still got your physical structure right there like it was before, but you've done a couple of movements and you've played with a few ideas, and suddenly your image of your shoulder and how you inhabit your chest, that's changed. So within our busy lives, can we also play with some of those tricks that we can find spaciousness and less compressed kind of constant activity? And yes, there's all these things we have to keep up with. We're running a conference, it needs to all come together, but how do we create this? It's almost like an illusion of spaciousness within that busyness that's still happening. So what can we drop away? What's extraneous, and how do we give those little moments of pause?
Yeah, I was just before we got back on, so we had a pre-record before you came on, so no one could see me, and I was just doing a bit of just gentle eye massage and just having that moment. So I think that's the kind of thing you're talking about, but of course it could be anything because we're talking about curiosity.
I think a lot of it's about being in the moment.
Yeah.
Because some of the compression is like, oh, all the things that need to happen, oh, that's really tiring, all these things that need to happen. But they do need to happen, and you'll do them one at a time. And
they're not all going to happen at once.
If you do the one thing right now without the other stuff so present, then it's a different experience.
Yeah. A few weeks ago, my son said, how are you or whatever. And I just said, oh, it's a very busy time. It's feeling a bit of pressure. And he just said, well, you'll get it done. You always do. And he's a, 19-year-old kid. And I just went, you're right, actually. Like, well, yes, I do. And he's grown up watching that. So yeah, it was always like a little bit of affirmation of like, yeah, no, it will. It's fine. Yeah.
And sometimes the outside observer can show you things that you can't
give you that. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. So what do you feel like people will leave that session, the gift of space? What will they leave with that they didn't maybe have when they arrived?
Yeah, I think everyone's going to take a different idea. I think that's what's really lovely, that we all come from different starting places and different ideas land for particular people. I think the embodied sense of spaciousness is what I would be aiming for. But if they walk away with some other idea that seems most important to them, my own idea is less relevant.
That's it. So we might see people like sort of floating out of the class, but like full of amazing new like awareness and like ready to take on whatever it is in their world.
Yeah, I think just like taking what the space offers, and I think the space of Wise Women Gathering, that offers something, doesn't it? This little like tucked away little valley that doesn't have phone reception, and you're with these other women for 3 days of wholesome goodness, and like, doesn't that feed something into you, you know?
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
space holds something, yeah.
It's fertile soil, very much so.
I think a Feldenkrais quote that I forget but need to keep reminding myself is, you create the conditions for learning. What they learn is up to them, but like you set up the conditions, and then something can happen.
That's that trauma I mean, it's not that I would interpret that as a trauma-informed spaces, right? Like creating a safe space and creating a healthy space of curiosity so that people can take whatever they need and get whatever they need from that.
Safety first is really important, that we have this idea in Feldenkrais of not pushing into pain, that pain is distracting, and if you're in pain, you're not going to learn anything because your attention is just on the pain or consumed. So really setting up the support and the comfort that quietens that, so that you do have scope for learning, for being curious, for noticing something other than the pain. Yeah.
Makes me, I think that you were the person who introduced the idea in our Decolonizing the Circle class around choice. Was it you that said like that you'd learned that choice is not 2 options, like to have choice there has to be at least 3 options? Do you want to speak to that?
Comes from Feldenkrais, wasn't my idea. So 2 options is this binary yes or no. To make a choice, you actually need more than that then you've actually got like something to choose. That's the crux of
it's pretty simple actually, isn't
what
it?
that idea is.
Yeah, I use that quite a bit with clients. And I think when we, so for those listening that might not know, all of our educators have to go through a mandatory course called Decolonizing the Circle, and it includes trauma-informed spaces and obviously some decolonizing aspects, cultural appropriation, like lots of bits and pieces that help create that stability of safety within our conference space. And so I can't even remember what the topic was, but Shona, you had made that comment in, so the educators watch the videos and then everybody comments and there's these beautiful conversations that come out of that. And you'd made that comment and so many people, myself included, were just like, oh yes, that is the piece. Like, so obvious, but we don't think about it because it's not what's shown to us anywhere else, right? We have to learn that somewhere.
I think as an educator, in designing a session to have choice, it actually makes you understand your own topic better, because you have to have more than one way of doing something.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, you have to, well, what are we actually doing here? What's the point? How could it be done differently?
Yeah, it's made me think a lot around like retreat spaces and things that as I move forward from that moment when I got that piece of information, always adding at least one extra piece and maybe more, but and then the open-ended question at the end of that, right? So like, here's the options, and if you have another idea, that's cool too.
Yeah, and this is inviting agency. This is giving people like their own ability to self curate their experience.
Yeah. Yeah, for it to be theirs, not ours. We're the teachers or the facilitators, but it's actually not our experience that's supposed to be had here. It's theirs, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
I think
nice.
there's definitely a two-way thing where the dynamic of the group feeds back to you, and that shapes you. You come in for, you know, here's what I think will happen, and then what actually happens is, you know, an exchange between who's there, and that's why we do it live.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what makes a good. I haven't found a better word than good, other than like a whole string of words. But I think everyone knows what I mean when I say that's what makes a good facilitator in that space, because we're willing to, for it not to be our experience, for it to be a conversation between us and the other people in the room. Yeah, that's a good teacher.
I think that's something that takes time. I think the first time you do anything, having a structure to rely on is really nice,
Yeah, yeah, you got to start somewhere. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
So we usually put your workshops in the holistic conscious living kind of space. It's not quite plant wisdom, it's not quite women's mysteries. It's really aligned with a holistic body embodiment kind of world. But I'm interested to know, what do you like to attend? So our 4 streams at the conference are plant wisdom, holistic conscious living, women's mysteries, and cultivating community. Now, the cultivating community obviously stretches across the whole conference, but then we'll have some certain workshops that are really explicit about that too. So what do you get drawn to when you're there?
Well, I have to admit, when I look at whatever I'm drawn to, I'm not consciously thinking this is part of the whatever stream.
That color on the program.
It's not what informs my decision. I would say, because I'm not a herbalist, the herbal ones don't seem to be as relevant to me as a body worker. I think that the specific properties of plants belongs to people who work with plants. And I definitely love the movement ones, so I'm very kinesthetic, and I'm drawn to those ones. And it's sometimes what you get drawn to can surprise you. So I found, you kind of look at the program beforehand, and you think there are sessions that you want to go to, and then you get to that point in the afternoon, and for whatever reason, this other session at the same time tickles your fancy, and away you go. So I think, like, being open to what's actually speaking to you in that moment, without needing to like overanalyze it. I think that's what's nice about having. Well, this comes back to choice. We were talking about choice before. There's not one afternoon session. You can choose.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am in the healing tent a lot, so
You don't get to so many.
the choices. There's less decisions that I'm making.
Yeah. And we before, when we were talking about the healing tent, we didn't say, like, you do choose to do a lot of the work in the healing tent, but not everybody has to do all their sessions. There's I think we only ask for 6 hours from healers if they're going to come as a healer or in the healing tent. Then they only got to give 6 hours, 6 sessions, and then there's plenty of other time to go to workshops, or you do what Shona does and just smash it out.
But I think
we've talked a lot today, Shona.
This comes back to the, like, if what you're doing is really engaging and satisfying, like that's nourishing and feeding me. And I'm choosing to do this because I enjoy it. And that's my version of the conference.
Yeah, well, it's nourishing you, and like you say, you get those little, you're still having relationship with those people that you're working with one-on-one.
Yeah. And I think this sensory subtleties that we feel underneath our fingers as body work, like, there's a whole realm that if you haven't been practicing your tactile perceptiveness, like, there's so much going on internally, and it's very fascinating because it keeps changing. It's not a static stage.
Well, that sounds like that's next year's session.
Well, I don't know where I'll be next year. I don't know what will be the most interesting. Yeah.
That's cool.
Let that evolve.
Yeah. We've talked a lot today about putting money in the hands of women that are going to do good things with it. Yeah, that's a big piece of the conference. You know, we want to have healers and vendors and whatever else where we know that the people who are making decisions with the money that we spend to them, that we give to them, is going to create more good things in the world, right? And that's a great piece around the healers tent, that we know that we're giving a contribution to people who are going to do great things with that, either on that weekend or wherever and whenever. Yeah. What do you think about the community overall?
Yeah, I
Wise
think
Women
that
Gathering community.
it's very, very nurturing space. I think it's the conversations within that dining hall that, to me, that's where the juice comes from. That the sessions are like the side dressings, and it is the community and the interaction, and that's what Wise Women is, I think.
Yeah, all those connections. Yeah. Do you, I don't remember if you camp or if you share space or you have private space. What do you do for sleeping?
Educator, I've been given a little cabin to share with the other educators, so that's nice.
That's good. That's good to know. I don't know if that's been put on the list, so I'll just make a note of that.
I can camp if you've run out of spaces.
No, there's plenty of space. Yeah.
But again, it's those little these little friendships you make within that shared space.
That's why I was asking, yeah, to see like, is it something that you feel that you like private time there, or is there something around that connection? Yeah, so please speak more to that.
I do like time away, and I think the healing tent offers some of that. I think I do a little walk up the mountain to get check my phone messages once a day. That gives me a little bit of time to myself. But I think it's very well articulated that you don't have to go to all the sessions. You just do what you need to do. You've said it, you know, if you need to sleep in your tent all weekend, that's fine. But there'll be people to come and check and make sure you're fine. But if that's what this weekend is for you, follow that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's space for everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
and where else do we get that, like, that privilege? The fact that we get 3 meals a day and snacks just arriving, and we just get to eat them. Like, that is
definitely. Yeah, that's a piece that I think a lot of women take away. I was having a chat with someone who attends yearly, and she brings her daughter, and she was saying to me that she wouldn't have been able to attend if it wasn't for the kids camp, you know, that she could bring her daughter to. She's a single mum. And then the piece around like, wow, you mean I can go somewhere, someone else looks after my kid, I get to go and like learn shit with other women, and someone feeds me all weekend, and it's like nourishing organic food. Like, this doesn't even make sense. This is worth all the holiday whatevers that I take in a year just for this weekend. Yeah. Special space. Yeah. Okay, so we're coming right down into the last bit of our hour. I appreciate you so much, and you for coming here and sharing all this information. And I just want everyone to know about Feldenkrais, because I want more practitioners out there. I want more people thinking about these spacious kind of curious ways. Is there a training body in Australia?
So it's called the Feldenkrais Institute of Australia.
Excellent. Easy to find.
It's not a physical building. It's just, you know, someone who organises the training. And recently they've started doing more training. So I think part of why there's not that many practitioners is there was a couple of trainings and then no trainings for many years. So a lot of the practitioners in Sydney, where I'm based, they're kind of getting towards retirement. They don't need to like put themselves out there. They're like got a different sort of different
stage.
Yeah, yeah. Whereas I think at the moment they're trying to like, okay, let's make sure this stays alive. Let's make sure there's another generation coming through that, yeah, brings their own takes. So yeah, Feldenkrais Institute of Australia, if you are interested. And part of this isn't like a gatekeeping thing, but part of applying to do a training is you need a Feldenkrais practitioner to sort of write a letter of recommendation.
Wow.
Which just says, yes, Hollie would be a good candidate.
Yeah.
And not quite in that language, but Hollie knows what this is about and she's right on board. So
yeah, that people have, that they're not starting from some, like, I mean, I was at a training a few weeks ago, completely different style of training, but guys were just there going, oh, well, my mate was coming, so I just came. It was 5 days of like natural movement training, mostly on the ground. These people had never done anything. They're like, oh, he said it would be fun, so I came, and they were wrecked by the end of it. So you don't want that
attitude, though, that like this like sense that there's no barriers, like the fact that they're just like open enough to like
come on in.
into the unknown.
So Feldenkrais is really asking for a bit more like awareness, attunement, and just like a check-in
I
where
think
they're coming from.
What we really do love is diversity in the room, that it's a richer training if you have a whole variety of ages and occupations, and that brings different bodies for one thing, but different perspectives into a space. So if it's all white women in their 40s, then that's just like, you know, a bit bland.
Absolutely. Definitely. And do you,
if those are the people who are interested, you're going to take them, aren't you?
Of course. Yeah. Australia's only so big when it comes to, I think, some of these sort of subcultural elements of subcultures of subcultures. Do you participate in like teaching the training? Is that part of your role in the world?
That takes quite a while.
Okay.
So I don't know the whole process, but you have to go through a whole apprenticeship before you're accredited to teach. But I teach my class. And I'm actually attending a little study group tomorrow afternoon with some other Feldenkrais practitioners. And I think a characteristic of these study groups is like everyone's actually really open to learn from each other. This comes back to the ego conversation that was had at the end of last session, is people aren't trying to prove how skilled or knowledgeable they are. That part of the ethos is like this ongoing learning. So that's really nice to be around.
Yeah, that's nice. It's that collegial connection that we need in these one-to-one kind of works that we do.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, Shona, we've asked everybody for, or the speakers, for a gift from this symposium. So something that you would be willing to give to the audience and, you know, anyone who's listening on until the conference. We're going to make all this available tonight when you and I finish. I'm going to start uploading.
Oh, that takes a while.
Oh, most of the structures are there. I just got to get the YouTubes up. But what was your gift that you wanted to give to everybody?
So Feldenkrais is embodied. So we can talk all we like about it, but until you experience it, maybe it's just words. So my gift is free Feldenkrais classes. So I teach 2 online classes and an in-person class in Annandale in Sydney. And between now and the conference, you can come for free using the code WWG, the Wise Women Gathering.
Awesome. That's so easy.
I think Hollie's written that somewhere on the website.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I don't know if I actually put a code on. I will double check that when we get off, but it will be there by the end of tonight. Yep. Yeah, for sure. That's so beautiful. Oh, and so there's online and face-to-face, so people can do it from wherever. And also
so if you go to my website, movingintune.com/classes, then you'll get the details there.
Yeah, so good. All right. And you've given us you've pretty much answered my next question, which is how do they find you, whether that be in person or online, and include your socials and all that sort of thing so people
Well,
can
I would
track
say
you
go to
down.
my website. I would say I'm a very non-active social media person.
She's too
Someone told me,
busy moving and questioning herself, people. She don't have
someone
time for
told me
social
the other
media.
day that they looked at my socials and I went, what socials? What did you see? Historic. Yeah. Anyway, movingintune.com. That's
Yeah,
my website. Yeah.
beautiful. Even the name is just great. Great, great, great. Yeah. I appreciate you so much, Shona. I'm so glad you were here. Thank you for
Thank
being
you
our
for everything, Holly. You've just poured so much time and consideration and care into making this what it is.
Well, the threads go from here onward, right? This is my mentor Thea Guy used to say, like, we start spot fires here, but we don't know where those spot fires jump and become bonfires. I know that's not the best analogy now.
So I like the jumping though, that it doesn't have to be direct.
You
That's
don't
nice.
know where those spot fires show up. And I think things
Mm.
like this have just made that even easier, like as in online things, because,
Mm.
Marina that just joined us, she just found out about us today. She's here and she's had this great experience. And who knows where she now takes her spot fire and where it jumps to. Yeah.
And I think if I just quickly weave that back to Feldenkrais, that like something can feel impossible and you do one slight little something and suddenly it works. And that's like the magic where a tiny little detail might be all that needs it to change it. So that's cool.
That's perfect. All right, let's pause there.
All right.
We'll give thanks for Shona. I'm going to hit the stop record.